Hey everybody, welcome to the Adventist Hoops podcast. I'm here today with Keith Beckett. He is the vice principal, interim athletic director. You've coached in the past. Keith, welcome to the show, first of all.
Thank you, Dustin. I appreciate you having me on.
So
Thank you again.
what are all the roles that you've had over the years? How long have you been at TA? What all have you done to get
Perfect.
you to
So
this
I
point?
came in, I think my first year was 13, 14. And my initially I was the dean of students and the athletic director. And then I'm not necessarily progressed, but kind of changed roles to vice principal. And then with that being said, one of the responsibilities of mine is the athletic program, to oversee and run the athletic program. So in the past, we've had athletic directors, but currently we don't have one. So right now it's kind of back in my lap to run, I guess, on a day-to-day type of operation as opposed to overseeing it. So I'm scheduling, doing those type of things for the upcoming year.
Takoma Academy is one of the premier Adventist basketball programs, not even just now, but also going into the past. So I'm curious what your roots are with TA and, kind of a little bit of your history.
Okay, so I grew up in this Washington, D.C. area. So TA, if you're not going to boarding school, whether it be Pine Forge or SBA, TA is the place that you would go, as an Adventist family. That's where you would matriculate to. So again, I grew up in this area. I attended TA as a ninth grader. I won't say the year. I don't want to date myself, but I did attend TA as a ninth grader. I stayed for 1 year. I had an older brother who graduated. Um, but for people who don't know, who maybe even from the DC area, TA used to host, or TA was the hosting spot for a huge basketball camp that was run by the legendary coach Morgan Wooten, who's in the Basketball Hall of Fame, who coached the legendary DeMatha Catholic High School for many years, and probably 25, 30 pros, several nationally ranked teams. So he and John Gallagher, who coached St. John's Catholic High School in DC, they ran their basketball camp from TA. So several kids went to play, went to camp there. One of the things the previous coach at TA, Bob Paulson, did, he made sure his players either work camp or were in camp, so they got an opportunity to play against the premier talent in the DC area. So they got better from that, and then it just kind of translated over into the program.
In talking to Bob Paulson, he's talked about his interactions as a young person with Coach Wooten as well, and hopefully we can talk to him about those in the future. But so there's sort of this influence of high level basketball at Takoma Academy. Do you think that's really the origins of sort of this program that was established? Was it Bob Paulson kind of setting up the groundwork for something that lasts to this day? It's been, I don't know if there's been any lulls in the competitive level of TA basketball, but it seems like it has kind of withstood the test of time.
For sure, I would definitely have to credit that to Bob Paulson. So you have to understand, and this is what I was told, because I'm a young man. I wasn't around when this started, but when the program started at TA, and I think that goes back to the mid '60s. My father went to Pine Forge, and I think he may have played in maybe that first game where they played TA. I don't know if you're familiar with the Bainham Foundation, but the son, Stuart Bainham, also played in that game. So they played TA, and that was kind of, while it was considered a intramural game, it was still one of the first games that they had. And I was told that TA got out of church league. So when they first started, they were playing church league and things like that. But John Graham got away from that because of the rivalries and just the negative energy that it caused throughout the churches. So that's one of the reasons why TA started playing non church affiliated entities. And they never really played SVA, which is right down the street. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to have, and I don't know if Mr. Henline is even still alive, so I don't want to say, but if he is, he would be a great person to have on, because SVA had some really good teams back during those times. But in any event, the reason why TA didn't play, HVA or Pine Forge or SVA, just because TA wasn't, or the church wasn't really accepting of the rivalries and the competition that way. So when Bob Paulson took over, I believe in the early '80s, they were part of a tri-state athletic conference, and they were in that conference for a few years. And then they went independent. And then over the years, they joined a few other leagues. And currently, we're in a missile league, which is the Maryland Independent School Athletic League. There's some pretty good competition in that league as well. Now, arguably, I think you're a West Coast guy, but arguably, the DC area is the best bed of high school basketball in the country in terms of DeMatha, Gonzaga, Paul VI, Sidwell Friends, all top 10, 15 teams, ranked teams consistently in the nation. So we get a lot of credit. So a lot of that spills over to TA, meaning a kid can go to DeMatha, which is less than 5 miles down the road, may not enjoy his time and transfer over to TA. While clearly the mission of all of our Adventist schools is a place for our Adventist kids to come and play, but part of our mission also is to witness. So while we're not actively recruiting kind of non-Adventist kids to come, some walk through the door, whether they have an Adventist affiliation through a grandmother or a parent. We get a lot of kids who come in and out of our school, and a lot of times they just happen to be very good basketball players due to the area that we're in. So that's been one of the wonderful blessings that we've had in terms of our basketball program.
Do you feel like, as far as you're aware, was there a moment where the program's reputation began recruiting some of these players on its own, or was that just something that kind of naturally happened from the beginning, just because of proximity?
I think a little bit of both, because not only was the camp there that I spoke about that Morgan Wooten ran, we also played in all of the summer leagues with all of the top tier schools. So initially it was Jelliff, and then it was at Sidwell Friends, and now it's over at DeMatha, which we currently play in a summer league. So you play against these schools, and kids might say, I may not get the minutes I want at St. John's. I may not be getting the minutes I desire at Gonzaga. This Takoma Academy, they play a solid schedule. Seems to be a good academic school, solid foundation. So let me take my talents there. So I do think it's kind of a little organic, and then a little bit of kind of actively going after a few. Big kids don't grow on trees, so you have to try to be competitive. You really need a little bit of size. So there are some times where we have looked to attract some size to help the program.
In your opinion, as far as you know, what is the greatest TA team of all time?
So that would be an argument, and I don't know the demographics of people, or not demographics, but the age of people who watch your show. So if you ask Bob Paulson, he'll say 75. That's the team he was on. Now, I will say, and what I've learned, Jimmy Vines he was in the class of 75, is probably arguably the best player to come out of TA on paper. Well, I'm sorry, in the opinion of others. Tony Skinn on paper by far is the best. He was on the George Mason team, the starting point guard on that team. They went to the Final Four. So on paper, Tony Skinn is not even close, right? But arguably Jimmy Vines. So the 75 team, because of the size and the games and the teams that they beat, those early Mackin teams that were really good. And then the 86 team, which would have been guys like, I don't know if Walt Saunders, Jimmy Street, Andy Martyr, Billy Morgan. And I was a little boy, but those guys were incredible. And then I would say I would have to put the 14 team in that class, only because they beat Montrose Christian that year and they were ranked 3rd in the nation. So to go over to Montrose, coached by Stu Vetter, beat that team with future lottery pick Alonzo Traylor on that team, it's hard not to put those guys up there. Now, could they have beat the 86 team? Heavens no. Could they have beat the 75 team? Heavens no. But for the sake of arguing, resume to resume, they're going to say, hey, we beat, a top 5 team in the country with a future NBA lottery pick. I don't know if Alonzo was lottery. He was definitely a first-round pick, but Alonzo Traylor. So it's hard to say. But in my opinion, 86 would be the best.
Hey, that was a great breakdown. That's a question that it's kind of impossible to answer, but it's always fun, so I had to ask.
That 86 team was amazing.
Just yesterday, I asked the question on Instagram, what are some of the best Adventist teams of all time? So a lot of the highlights that we've been posting are high school and college younger kids, but I saw some of the older heads coming out of the woodwork yesterday and claiming, some of the older teams. So I think the audience is a little more broad than probably I realized, but it was fun to see some people reminiscing. And it's a, good reminder that we're not always as good as we think we are, right? And there's people that came before us. The young guns need to just have some perspective and remember that there's been a lot of great players that have come before them. But yeah, it's just fun. It's fun to think about. Were you
Yeah,
uh, were you around when Tamir Goodman? We had Tamir Goodman on the podcast a few episodes ago. If people didn't hear that, he was nicknamed the Jewish Jordan. Was recruited by Maryland, got an offer from Maryland, couldn't play at his Jewish school, and because of his Sabbath observance, TA reached out and said, "Hey, do you want to play there?" And he had a great senior year. Went on to play Division One. Were you there? What do you remember about Tamir Goodman?
I was not there at that time. I think that might have been late '90s, early 2000s. I don't know exactly the year.
Yeah,
I think Tony Skinn and Patrick Query and maybe even Brian Wright were on those teams as well. Um, I remember that they got a lot of hype in terms of Tamir Goodman was getting a lot of press. And I hate to say this because I don't want to bust anybody's bubble, but in terms of the teams that were good that year in the area, TA didn't measure up to those teams, but I know they had some really great games versus Murray and some other teams. In fact, I think they had a sold out game that was at American University, which easily holds 4,000 people that would have come out to see them play. A lot of excitement, and they were a really good team. But I was not at TA. I was in the area. I was just getting into coaching the late '90s, early 2000s. So I was just getting into coaching. But again, they were a very talented group, but I think they were kind of young, and I don't think they had a whole lot of size.
you mentioned some of the greatest players in TA history. What would be your top five?
But I top five. So in no order, just
Sure,
names. Of
sure.
course, Tony Skinn, of course, Jimmy Vines. If you look at that '86 team, it's hard to say because guys shine because sometimes individual players shine because of team
That's
and
right.
how the team plays. But a guy like Walt Saunders, I think, would have to be on that list. Uh, I would put a guy named Kevin Holston on that list. He was 90. I think he was 1990. He was really good. I think one of the Parchment brothers is like TA's all-time leading scorer, so it's hard not to have him on the list. I think that's five right there. But then there's another kid, Tyrone Hammond, who was incredibly good. I think he was in the late '90s. He was incredibly good. Really developed into a really good player, able to score the ball. So that would have to be six, and that doesn't include any of the guys that have been there during my 10 years currently serving as vice principal or athletic director. No offense to those guys. Uh, I'm an older. I think the game was played better earlier.
Mm.
I do think these kids are more talented and more athletic, but I just, for whatever reasons, I'm an older guy. I respect the game before, so yeah, that would be my six. I know you asked for five, but that would be my six.
Okay. You'd mentioned earlier that TA has been a part of different associations over the years, as opposed to some schools, they join their state interscholastic association and they play in that every single year for decades. Why has TA fluctuated so much from, being a part of the state association to, being in different leagues or being independent?
So for clarity, I think the California schools and maybe New York now can be a part of the state association and play for the state championship. I don't believe Maryland is there yet. So
Mm.
a private school can't play for the state championship.
Oh, okay.
So we do have a Maryland private school championship, and DC now went to a DC private school championship that's different from the inter high public. So
Interesting.
the reason why TA has moved so much because if you're not in the Catholic League, which is clearly Catholic schools, and then they have kind of two or three other really strong leagues, the MAC, that's mostly, I believe, Episcopalian schools, and then you have the IAC, which is a mixture of Episcopalian, and some Catholic schools. So we couldn't get into any of those leagues for obvious reasons. And then so from there you find yourself in a Christian league, and it used to be really strong, called the Beltway, that had Montrose, Riverdale Baptist, National Christian. TA was in that league for many years. But it never really had a strong commissioner, in my opinion, to keep it going. So teams would fluctuate in and out, and then new schools would pop up and want to join in. And the difference in us and all of them, TA has always had a great reputation, good consistency. So we could get games, I guess, with anyone. So we could call DeMath and say, hey, you guys willing to play us? And they would say, okay, we don't have to question your student athletes. We don't have to question what year they're in, if they're reclassed, if they're this, that, and the third. So we could always get games. But that is the reason why we've had to search and go from league to league, and then also find a league that's willing to accept our Sabbath, meaning, of course, we can't play on Friday nights or Saturdays, which for high school basketball, every tournament is going to end up being Friday night or Saturday or championship or things like that.
TA has made a big commitment to attend the Southwestern Adventist University Hoops Classic every year, pretty much, it seems like. And there's no Sabbath issues at that tournament. Why Southwestern? Why has TA been committed to that tournament for so long?
So when my first year at TA, I was told the girls had attended once, and that was the year before I got there. And we went down and kind of fell in love with the tournament. And at that time, we thought and still feel that that is a tournament easiest to get to for us that'll have the best competition. I know that a lot of schools go to Andrews, and I think some schools, I think Union may have a tournament as well.
Yep.
And I'm not, someone mentioned Walla Walla, but that's a little too far for us to go. Early on, we went out to Loma Linda one year for the tournament. I don't know how it is now. At that time, the boys' side wasn't really competitive for us, and I don't mean that in a negative way. It just wasn't. The girls' side was really good, and so that's one of the reasons why we've gone to Texas. And then, to be honest with you, we started going to Texas. I think that's 14. Our girls may have won Texas 5 or 6 years in a row, and I think some schools weren't coming back, and we had issues. And Texas was like, hey, you guys, can you all go somewhere else so someone else can win, so teams can come? But what has happened? Other schools have gotten really good and really stepped their programs up, and then, especially on the boys' side and definitely on the girls' side, you have schools now like North Tampa, the Dallas. I don't know if it's called North Dallas or one of the teams at Dallas is really good. At one time, GAAA was really good. They've kind of been up and down. Oakwood girls have been up and down. But it's great now to see so much parity in the tournament. I think the team that won it last year was a local team, Chisholm Trail. So it's great to see the parity. I don't think anybody is fearful of TA anymore. They're like, hey, we'll go down there and compete. We're consistently either in the championship or the Final Four. We're kind of the Duke, team you love to hate, But it's been great, and I think we're just kind of married to it at this point.
I wonder too if at some point they broke it up into small schools and large schools, because I know that's the case now, and maybe that helped with some of that parity along the way. Yeah, to my knowledge, we have 5 Adventist tournaments. We got Walla Walla, PUC, and I'm talking about at colleges, Andrews, Union, and Southwestern. There are some big academy tournaments. Loma Linda still has theirs over Christmas break in December. North Dallas has come out for that a couple of years. They weren't able to come this last year, but they were planning on it, and then they couldn't. Also, Collegedale in Tennessee has a pretty big tournament.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I wasn't on my radar until last year as well, but it appeared to be pretty big. At least 10, maybe 15 schools. Sorry, Eric, the AD there, if I got the numbers wrong there, but it was big, as big as some of these other university tournaments. So, yeah, so there are some options out there, and man, if there's Adventist schools out there that aren't going to an Adventist basketball tournament, I mean, you gotta do it. I was thinking about the effort that our basketball players put in over the summer, or lack thereof, and there's some schools that put a lot of emphasis on getting better and participate in summer leagues, or maybe go to a summer tournament. Other schools that, basketball is just not a huge priority, and that's fine. But it's certainly a big priority at TA. Talk about the year-round prep, effort that's put into maintaining a high level of competitiveness at TA?
Sure. So let's just start in the summer. So they usually play in a summer league or two. Some years we'll play in two summer leagues. One will be at DeMatha, and that's an incredibly competitive summer league. And then the JV team will play in a JV summer league over at Bishop McNamara, which is a school that's in the WCAC, but they offer a summer league for JV where most of the big schools will bring their freshman team and a JV team. So aside from that, varsity might do a team camp or two. And I'm sure you're familiar with team camps, but different universities will call schools, kind of maybe they'll hand select some, but then others they'll have an open division and you can go and play kind of a tournament style. No real championship, but you can play 3 and 4 games over the course of a weekend. So if we play in one summer league, coaches usually opted to go to a team camp or two. Aside from that, they may be a workout or two during the week. And then once the school year starts, it's kind of a break for a few weeks, maybe even a month. And then coach usually starts with weights and conditionings a couple of days a week. And then they're in the gym doing some skill development in the fall. And that's pretty much the same in the spring after the season. So it's definitely a year-round commitment.
It may seem obvious, like, of course, but like, explain why that is so important if you want to have a competitive program.
Well, I think if you want to be a good student, you
Mm,
have to study consistently, right? If you want to be a good writer, if you want to be a good musician, I think sometimes, especially as Adventists, we always say, okay, well, our kids aren't going to the pros, so why do they put so much effort into sports? But as we know, sports have so many other meanings outside of just on the court, right? Whether it's problem solving skills, whether it's learning to work with a group, whether it's learning to deal with disappointment, whether it's learning to manage emotions, whatever the case. There's so many proven reasons why sports matter, and not just basketball, but sports, period. So that's one reason. And then two, to keep up. I mean, if you look at the game, the guys are stronger now, they're faster. So in order to keep up, you have to get in the gym and work. And unfortunately, sports is a sport that it's not an equal opportunity. Like you and I could take the same amount of shots, Dustin, in practice. You and I could take the same amount of shots in workouts, and you might get in the game and might not make any, and I might make every one, or vice versa. So, but again, it's muscle memory, it's repetition, it's something that the only way to get better is to put the work in. So I think that's why.
what do you think the excellence of basketball at TA has done for the image of the school and just of Seventh Day Adventists in the community in the greater DMV area?
Well, I think for the basketball supporters, it's great because on any job at the water cooler, no one says, "Hey, what's the SAT score at TA?" They don't do that at the water cooler. They say, "Wait, how did the game go with TA in Spencerville? Or how did the game go with TA and whomever? Or how did the kids do at Texas?" So I think it's great. It also, unfortunately, in anything that you do that's not academic as a school, sometimes it could be frowned upon. The kids spend too much time doing this, so therefore, they're unable to do that or unable to be as successful as that. But one thing I can say is that our student athletes are held to being students first. They have to make the grades first. They have to put the effort in the classroom before they can touch the field or the court. But I definitely think it's been a positive in our community. It doesn't outshine our academics. I think all of our Adventist schools are known for academics. I still believe we are the second largest school system in the world, I believe, to the except for the Catholic system. So I think our academics speak for themselves. So outside of that, fine arts and athletics are what the kids are interested in, and why not provide them? Again, statistics show that a well-rounded child, whether it's fine arts, athletics, do better in life. So why are we frowning on student athletes being student athletes?
Hmm. What do you think how do you think TA's success in basketball has impacted the view of the public on Seventh Day Adventists in that area?
I think it's been a positive light. I think parents are now saying, "Hey, my kid can go to a Seventh Day Adventist school," because honestly, and I know it's a podcast, but people who don't know anything about Seventh Day Adventists probably think we're a little weird, right? They probably think they're a little kooky, a little weird until they get to meet someone or know someone. But I definitely think it has a positive light because they're saying, "Hey, they're no different from us. Our kids can be just as successful there. And honestly, it's the schools are the biggest witnessing program we have. I think as a church, we need to put more effort into the school in terms of witnessing, as opposed to, I grew up. It was the Trinity, right? I guess the home, the school, and the church. And the school now is taking on more responsibility than either of those. So we really have to put more effort into it.
That's interesting. Why do you think that is?
I don't know, man. That's probably a conversation for some ministers. I don't know, man. I would, you know, uh, honestly, I don't know. I think
Yeah.
education as a whole needs to be a bit reformed, but that's probably a different podcast.
Yeah. Well, I've thought about it too over the years. Just you see a lot of people, not really engaged in the church as much, and yet they'll stay engaged with their Adventist school that they're an alumnus from, or but
Well,
yeah.
I can speak to that. I mean, clearly the school helps shape who we are, right?
Mhm.
So as much as someone can say I hated TA, this, that, and the third, or I love TA, it helps shape who you are. So you're going to always refer back to those fond memories. Most
Yeah.
of the alumni that I talk to that are in the church or not in the church, their fondest memories have come from those formative years of TA, or wherever Christian school they went to. I mean, Pine Forge kids have a great uh, camaraderie and great memories of their school. TA has the same. I'm sure SVA has the same. I'm sure St. Gabriel has the same. I'm sure that Walla Walla has the same, or any of the other academies. The kids remember the music trips, the sports trips, the being with their friends, the lessons that they've learned during those time periods. So that's what sticks to you for the rest of your life.
How has proximity to Washington Adventist University over the years sort of supported the program at TA? Has that had any impact, do you think?
Definitely. When I first got to TA, Coach Query, I think was just taking over, or just kind of getting his feet set there. And I think he really reshaped and rebranded, or helped rebrand Washington Adventist University. I think they changed their logo from the shop, from the Pioneers to the shop, or whatever the case. But he really was one for promoting sports there, a positive impact. And then it trickled down to TA because he was always in our gym recruiting players. And while it's NAIA, for someone to offer you some money and reason why I say that, kids always look at it and say, oh, it's just NAIA. And I explain to them, no matter what level, if someone is willing to give you some money for school to play, it's a big deal. And if you think it's just NAIA, get out there and compete and see how tough it really is. So, you hear kids say, well, it's not Division 1. That doesn't really mean anything. It's still a level. And if it's your level, then that's where you need to go and play and put forth your best efforts.
Yeah, and we've seen a number of people go from NAIA to NCAA, or the reverse. Didn't work out at NCAA, but they're Division 1 talent. But now they're playing in NAIA. Transfer portal has made that easier. So it's certainly a really competitive place to play, no matter what. I want to see if I can get Pat on sometime. He recently took a position at a Division 1 school. I think it's Florida Atlantic. Mm,
Florida A&M, Florida
Florida
A&M, which is
A&M. Okay.
yeah, it's HBCU, I believe. I think they used to be in the MEAC, but I think they're in another another division now. I think they're in the uh FLAC, I believe.
He just took that job this summer, so I'm probably just gonna wait, let him get a year under his belt before I come ask, because he's got a lot of things he's worrying about right now. But certainly a great story coming through. And you said he's a graduate of TA.
He is. I don't know the year, but I think, to my knowledge, so the new coach at PUC, Landon Banks, is also a TA graduate. I think he's a recent hire out at PUC. I think then, of course, Tony Skinn, who's at George Mason, and then there's actually an NBA GM who's a TA graduate, and he's a GM of an NBA team, and he's Adventist,
The Spurs.
and the Spurs. He's a graduate of
Remember his
Takoma
name?
Academy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last name is Wright, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, so TA has a good little coaching tree. The
Yeah.
coach who's at Washington Adventist, I think he was on your show, Jerry McFarland. While he's not a TA graduate, he was the first coach that I hired at TA.
Mm.
He was the first one under my time there, and Jerry did a tremendous job for us, and then is now able to lead WAU in a positive direction. And the coach we have now, Dave Creedle, has done an amazing job with what we have, and looking forward to him continuing to kind of just stand on the shoulders of others and elevate the program even further.
Yeah, I'm working and getting David on so he and I can talk together. But real quick, I mean, just talk a little bit about this group that has had some success here the last couple of years, and what the outlook is for next season. We'll get into all the details with David, but just so that people kind of get a feel for where things are at. We've been talking a lot about the past. Where's the TA basketball program at right now?
I think it's in a good situation. He has some really good guards returning. Micah Samuels will be senior, and I think he's probably on the radar for all of the Adventist schools, or at least he should be. He's a very good player.
Should be.
He probably could play easily in low Division I school. I know he's an Adventist kid, so I'm hopeful that he's looking forward to continuing to play in a system where he doesn't have to compromise his beliefs. We have a really good sophomore in Matthew McKenzie. Actually, we have a really great sophomore class. We have Jalen Goff, we have Kenneth Jarrett, some really good guys that are returning. Guards. We also have Tyler Stevens, who will be upcoming seniors, really good shooter. So it's kind of small ball. We're trying to attract some size, but the kids are really tough defensively. Get after it, try to pick up 94 feet and pressure the ball and kind of wear you down and make it a up and down game. When you kind of don't have any size, at least in our area, you have to play to your strengths in a sense. And I guess it'll be any area. So we're going to have to play a high tempo and get up and down the floor and get a lot of bodies out there on and off the court. And, hopefully guys will understand their role and be willing to accept it. A lot of times kids want to, they all want to be Seth Curry or Stephen Curry or whoever they see or emulate in the NBA, but that doesn't always translate to high school basketball. So I definitely think Coach will do a good job with this group in terms of getting them to buy into defending first and letting your offense come from the defense.
And what about the girls? I mean, they were ranked in our top 6 best Adventist teams this last season. I'm going off memory here, but did they win the league championship?
They did win the Missile League championship. They lost, though, in the one of the Maryland private school championships, but they did an amazing job. We did lose a big piece in Samantha McKenzie. She was a senior and she graduated, but we really have some talented young girls, and then some freshmen that are coming in that'll definitely be ready to make an instant impact. So I know in talking with Coach George, he's really excited about this upcoming season. It'll be interesting. Every couple of years we say, okay, let's try to go to even though I said we were married to Texas, we always talk about, every couple of years saying, hey, let's try another tournament. But Coach George is like, hey, my mission isn't complete in Texas. So I think he's really wanting to get back to the finals.
Okay. Well, we'll look forward to that. Well, Keith, I really appreciate you coming on. It's really interesting to hear some of the history that people don't think about. Especially younger people, they just look at the here and now, but they're playing on the shoulders, like you said, of people that have come before them. And, basketball is just one of those things that Adventists have held a certain pride for decades, and it goes back a long time. And so it's cool to see some of the roots of that at one of the kind of flagship institutions as far as basketball goes, and appreciate you sharing some of that. And I had one other question to kind of go back to the original history that you were talking about. Who won that first game between Takoma?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know. I'll have to ask my dad, man. I'll text you, and maybe on one of the other shows you can.
Well, I'll just put it in.
I don't know.
I'll put it in the show notes of this one, but yeah, that's a who won. Is that possibly the first Adventist high school, head-to-head?
It could have been.
We got to know who won that, if that's the case. If that really was the first game.
We would definitely have to know who won. Yeah, that's one question I never asked, honestly.
Maybe they didn't keep score. Maybe they didn't want it to be too competitive.
Maybe not. Maybe they stopped it at a tie, 50-50.
Yeah, find out with the year and who won, and we'll get that out there, because that's just fun history.
I'm certain it was 64, but
okay,
I will get the I'll get the winner.
That's 80 years ago.
Wow.
64?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow.
Wait, what did I say? 80? Sorry.
Yeah, it's not
It's
not
not
quite
80.
80, but
It's
yeah.
60. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 60 years ago. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, hey, that just goes to show you a long tradition, a rich history of Adventist basketball. So, Keith, thank you so much for coming on the Adventist Hoops podcast. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate you inviting me. Thank you for this opportunity to talk about TA and then an opportunity to talk about Adventist hoops. So thank you very much.